I would just say too, as we start this, if your comments tend to be to the longer side, it's already starting to get late, I know everyone's warm. Anything you have in writing can still be submitted to the board and will still be part of the record. Try not to be too repetitious. I know a lot of people have the same concerns. If the first 10 people ahead of you are saying the same thing you were gonna say, maybe that point has been made, but obviously everyone has a chance to speak. Like I say, if it's gonna be longer, written comments would be appreciated. We are gonna be looking at everything.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make one point. There have been a number of submissions that preceded the applicant, and I assume.
Could people try and talk a little louder?
Yeah, there have been a number of submissions by the applicant, and I assume there may be more written submissions as you've suggested. So my recommendation to the board is that you keep this hearing open for a period of time going forward so that the applicant or the public can have an opportunity to read these submissions and then submit their own additional comments to it, all right, in fairness.
Sure.
Okay.
Just on that point though, Bob, with the question of the shot clock, we're already at November 15th.
I know.
And so we are gonna start to run into it if we keep the hearing open too long and continue to accept new information.
I understand, and you're gonna have to judge what that period is gonna be. Maybe it'll be a week, maybe 10 days, I don't know. But then you're gonna have to also set another meeting for making decisions before the deadline.
Just so everyone in the room knows, we are not making any decisions tonight. There'll be no votes tonight, no decisions being made tonight. We're here to hear what you have to say. And if I could ask, your questions and comments should be directed to the board. This isn't a question and answer period for the applicant. The applicant will probably want to summarize at the end of the meeting and maybe address some of the things you've said, but the questions really should be to us. And we may not have answers for you right now if they're in the form of a question, but it will be part of the record. We will make sure any comments, substantive comments that are made will be part of any decision-making that happens.
Okay, let's get started. Mr. Logan?
You fast? Okay.
Passes?
Eileen Bernstein, did I say it right?
My name is Ellen Varela Burstein, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Putnam Highlands Audubon Society.
I'm sorry, could you just state your address or affiliation?
I just said, on
sorry.
behalf of the Board of Directors.
I was writing your name and I.
Highlands Audubon Society,
sorry.
a Mid-Hudson chapter of the National Audubon Society. As a chapter of a major environmental organization, we are very concerned about the effect a tower will have on our environment, its effects on wildlife, and the quality of life for the community. For this reason, we're requesting immediate monitoring of air, soil, water, including aquifers, and wildlife to establish baseline data, and that continuing monitoring be required to ensure that there are no negative impacts should a tower be approved. We would recommend that alternative solutions be considered first. Distributed antenna systems is one alternative that already exists and should be explored and considered, but there may be other newer technologies that could meet our communication needs without endangering our environment as a cell tower does. Therefore, we request a report on alternative options be prepared and vetted by outside engineers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gareth Guest?
Chairman Board, my name is Gareth Guest. I live at 4 Crown Street at the intersection of Crown and Secord, as many of you know. My house is 125 feet from the proposed site of the
Now, this is a different site, sir. We're talking about the Rockledge site?
No,
I know
I'm
you're
talking about the Secord site.
Well, we're not talking about the Secord site. But I know you want to talk about that. We're going to talk about it in a different forum.
Very good.
So, unless you want to speak to you can speak to the Rockledge site if you like, if you think it's a superior site, or
No,
you're
I
in favor of it,
very
please speak up.
Actually,
Okay, thank you.
can I offer an intervention on this part?
I'm sorry,
The
say again.
paperwork for Rockledge now includes the alternative site, so how can that not be?
What paperwork?
I can show you the letter.
We'll let you, when it's your turn to speak,
Okay,
you can
because it
address
relates
that.
to his right to speak tonight.
You don't have
It
the
is
right to speak.
implicitly part of
But
your
we're not
decision.
speaking about Secor tonight, this is a hearing for the
But
Rockledge.
Secor part is relevant to your decision on Rockledge. But we'll talk about.
But wait, you can bring that up, but the hearing tonight for the plaintiffs, I mean for the plaintiffs. For the applicant side, for the applicant side is specific to Rockledge tonight. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
There is a peripheral interest in the Secor side, as you say, and because we've asked to see alternative sites, but this hearing is specific to this site in Nelsonville. But we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Kenneth Levine?
And I was gonna talk about the Secor site, but that's not happening. I think all my thoughts up onto me. Are you gonna have that letter, that document that was handed to you?
On the
by
website, yes,
homeowner?
sir.
Will that, because I wasn't able to see that, so that's what I was gonna
We
comment
weren't either,
on.
so this is
As
from
far as
the
that.
neighbor?
Yes.
Yes, we just received it, they handed it to us, it will be, I believe, posted on the website, and everybody can look at it.
All right, so I'll be able to make that comment once I get the information.
Perfect.
I can't talk on something I don't have the information.
Neither can we, so thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Next.
Susan Drogan?
Drogon.
Drogan.
My name is Susan Drogon. I live on Windy Ridge, which is really my driveway, which comes off of Lane Gate and Moffett. My view is where the tower is supposed to be. I currently pay taxes based on my view, and I pay incredibly high taxes. I would like to know, since I've been advised by several realtors, that the value of my property will go down when this is what I am overlooking. Who do I speak to about getting my taxes adjusted, or will they be adjusted?
I think that's an assessor's,
Okay, the second part of this is, we were never advised about any balloon tests,
the
so,
balloon test was published in both papers.
all right, but I mean, the pictures and things that I've seen are all from the perspective of down low. Did anybody do any photography from above?
Well, I mean, we have a whole simulation provided by the applicant prior to the balloon test, which is available at the, on the website. You can see there's all different perspectives. And then the balloon test itself allowed people to go around the site and look at the height of the balloon. Some places you can see it, some places you can't. So I'm sorry that you didn't know about the balloon test, because it was a perfect opportunity to see the impact of the tower. I think, Robert, you said it was it 10 feet higher than?
The balloon's 10 feet higher.
10 feet higher than they will be. It's a 110-foot tower. They ran the balloon at 120 feet, and I wish you could have looked down from your house to notice if you would notice it or not.
Can somebody tell me exactly at what
Elevation?
elevation, yeah, that the base of the tower or the top of the tower will be?
110 feet from, it's not a mean average height, it's simply the height of the grade.
Yeah, what is the height of the grade?
From above the height of the grade. The-
No, all right, but what is the height of
Relative,
the
relative to
grade?
your,
Relative to sea level.
I don't know that I've done that, but
I mean, I know the elevation of my house
263.
relative to sea level.
there's a base of the towers at 260?
Base of the tower is 260.
Relative to sea level.
262 when it's 100, okay, thank you.
Okay, but I hope that you'll look at the simulations provided by the applicant, and it may help you understand if you'll see that tower or not.
And just because there's so many documents, I think that's in the, and others correct me, I think that's in the long form revised EAF, which is in the second batch of documents on the
Okay,
village
fine,
website.
I tried looking at the last batch from the land.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very dense, and that's what we've been doing for the last few months, is going through step by step that information. Next, please.
Harold Axelrod?
It's 260.
I was going to make a point about Secor only to the extent this process, and I've been attending most of these meetings.
Yes, sir, you have.
Was encouraging the applicant to look at that site.
The zoning, you're absolutely right, the zoning resolution, or code requires the applicant to look at alternate sites.
The only comment I would make is that one factor relevant to that consideration, not relevant for Rockledge, is that the environmental issues or the radiation issues that people are concerned about are strictly in the purview of the town at this point. The FCC has no jurisdiction. If the town says no to that site, it never gets to a question. So I would urge this board,
The board is not considering that. The
Understood.
board has no jurisdiction over that site, just to be clear. We're not making that judgment, unless we are, but we're not now. It's the village board, Nelsonville Village Board, that is negotiating that site. The zoning board is not involved, or nor is the planning board.
well, only to the extent we were seeking to see if that
Yes.
would be the solution. And what I'm
Absolutely.
suggesting is,
Correct.
to the extent it's not the solution because of concerns from the local schools, that is a relevant factor for this body to consider.
Say that again, what's relevant, the radio waves?
Yeah, in other words, it may not be relevant, we can't look at that because there's a
Oh, I
federal
see.
preemption on Rockledge. That preemption doesn't apply at the Secor site
I don't-
because
I
they
don't
don't
know
have.
that to be true.
Yeah, it is true, because they don't start with the premise of having the right from a landowner to build. In council's presentation, he made that clear, because there is a predicate, they have a lease for the property on Rockledge.
They're trying to negotiate a lease, you're absolutely right.
For Rockledge, I'm talking about. For Rockledge, they
not for
have.
Rockledge.
No, they own the land, or they have an option on Rockledge.
They don't own the land, but they do have an option perhaps on it.
Yeah, so my point is, I understand why we can't look at radiation issues on Rockledge. That is not the case when it comes to
Oh,
Secor.
I didn't know that, so.
It was actually established clearly at the meeting that the mayor skillfully ran that day.
What was established?
That if this board chooses to say, not this board, if the town chooses to
Village.
say, the village chooses to say.
Trustee and the mayor.
Sorry,
Yeah.
if the trustee and the trustees and the mayor choose to say that site is off limits, you never get to the question of whether the FCC would preempt us from asserting the radiation issues.
Because you don't have a willing landowner, you're saying.
Exactly,
Okay.
precisely right. That's my first point. Thank you. Second point.
Yeah.
It is acknowledged that the right-of-way issue up on Rockledge does have some limit. It's not unlimited, as one of the members was suggesting. But I think the phrase that Mr. Gaudioso used was that it has to be reasonable in light of the contemplated use. If the contemplated use up there is residential, the existing right-of-way doesn't need to be improved. It works. Mr. Villela lives on that street and built his home across that right-of-way. So did the Chapmans. So that right-of-way doesn't need to be rebuilt for a contemplated use for residents. It might have to be for a contemplated use for the antenna or the tower, but that's not what was contemplated when those deeds were carved up. They were carved up as carving out a right-of-way so that someone else could build a residence there in the same way the existing residents on Rockledge Road did it. So I would suggest there are natural limits, that it has to be consonant with the purpose of building a residence as opposed to building a tower, an airport, or any other non-conforming use.
Airports are not.
Not permitted in that zone.
The point is that, but a cell tower is permitted in that zone under a special permit, that's why we're here.
I understand, but if the special permit, if the dispute is over whether the right-of-way that's there is adequate or can be rebuilt into a highway, the answer is, it is currently adequate for the contemplated use of the site, which was mountain residential.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, I just have to correct one.
No, wait a second. I get to finish and you get to
Let's say it
finish.
again.
I didn't interrupt you. I waited patiently.
Okay, yeah, Robert, let's wait till the end. All right.
And the third point I'd make, my final point is, I do not believe the gap is a real one. I understand that maybe somebody can drive around with a meter and find that the signal is weak, but as a practical matter, for those of us who live here, it is adequate. I've driven up and down 301, I've driven up and down 9D, I haven't had a problem with drop calls. I had a cell call today up on Moffett Road, and the person I was speaking with was shocked at how good the signal was. It was better than the signal I get from my landline. It was as if he was next door, but he was in Boston. So
Okay.
again, if there is not in fact a demonstrated real need, I understand that counsel for plaintiff says he doesn't have the burden of proving a significant gap. We can establish that there's not a significant gap.
We as scientifically,
Well, we as residents of the village who use this product, who use this technology, and we say we don't feel there's a significant enough gap to destroy the aesthetic value, the homeowner's value for all the people living up at Rockledge Road and its vicinity.
okay, I appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
Andy, your turn.
Hey, thanks. Andy Refkin, 26-year resident of Phillipstown, 3-year resident of Nelsonville, 3 Crown Street, neighbor of Garrett. We're less than 150 feet from ground zero. My questions are not, I'll restrict the questions to
Rockledge.
to Secor. I mean to Rockledge.
Yes, thank you.
One thing I want to be sure I understand, now that the village and Homeland and Towers, in their correspondence on Rockledge, have introduced the option of a lease on Crown.
Yes.
Can that affect your decision on Rockledge? Can you say definitively it will not or cannot affect your decision on Rockledge? The fact that there's an option.
I don't know if I can say that.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's why it's relevant to talk about both at the same time. It's relevant because the paperwork, the November 1st cover letter that Robert sent, has a reference to an agreement, a lease offer made to the village on September 29th.
Correct.
To my mind, while you're not part of that negotiation,
And we are not.
that's fine, but for you to have confidence that this is a good faith operation that isn't using the densely populated Nelsonville to Secor site as an escape route for a successful venture that will bring revenue to the village and get around some of the legal issues up on Rockledge.
What are those legal issues?
Well, whatever the issues you're facing on Rockledge,
Which are.
they can be circumvented by came up a second ago, if there's some sort of impression that there's an easier path now, that 2 Secor is on village land, that you guys have some more confidence you're not going to be facing fights because some village officials who are dead set on fighting the other one now seem to have this positive sense of the one on Secor. Then that's a problem for those of us who live in that densely populated area around the Secor site. And it is relevant to your decision making, as you've just indicated. You can't wall out. You cannot guarantee.
We do know about it, and we do.
Yeah, it's in your heads. It's like there's an option now. Oh God, and it's actually cool.
The option is, but as I said before, the option is required by.
Yeah, and that's why
the applicant must look at other sites. We encourage them to look at other sites.
Right. So
the neighborhood, the Rockledge neighbors.
Right.
Have that option, right. And I don't know, I can't qualify how they're feeling about it, but the board allows them to look at other sites, so there's not much we can do about it, you know. I mean, we encourage them to look for other sites. They've looked for other sites, some aren't working.
But suppose if there was a question about legitimacy of all that, would that be relevant to you?
Right, can you explain a little bit more? Legitimacy.
Collusion.
What? What?
Collusion.
Collusion in reference to.
Well, let me just.
Village trustees saying, hey,
let me back up for a minute though. The subject of this application is Rockledge.
I know.
Okay.
But
Secor has been brought up as a possible alternative, as have a number of other sites in the village, and the village is.
And why was he able to give presentations tonight about the suitability of Secor?
None of those other sites are being proposed as an alternative. They're being explored as possible alternatives, but no one is saying we're going to change our application from Rockledge because the path through Secor seems that much easier. So we can really only look at what's being applied for before our boards at this time. Until such time as they make some accommodation with the village board, if that happens, and they come back to us and say, our preferred alternative is now Secor, that's what you should be reviewing, then we have to go through the whole scientific process all over again and start this process all over again. I would think, though, at this time, all we can really be talking about is Rockledge and understanding that Secor is out there as one of a number of other alternatives.
Yeah, Secor is only talked
But it seems to be
about
the
because
only-
it's in reference to the
No,
radio
not at all.
frequency or reports that we requested.
He
But
also
if it's
showed you photos of the site, and I can show you photos of this.
We want to find out if it is a legitimate site or not, within the context of the Rockledge site.
Right, and with that in mind, I have one request. And this is a request to you, you could just say yes or no right now. Can you release the lease offer as a public document, which will be releasable under FOIL anyway? Give a copy to them, the September 29th lease offer.
I was told to hold my comments to the end, so.
So let's hold his comments to the end, yeah.
Get an answer on that, please.
I'm sorry?
It'd be great to have an answer on that.
On whether the lease
That
document,
September
lease
29th
negotiations can be released to the public, they may be foiled, I don't know, we'll find out.
Yeah, well, it's relevant, I think it's relevant to your confidence that the escape clause is a legitimate one.
The escape clause, sir?
To Secor. As
It's
an
not an escape, I
alternative.
don't know why you're characterizing that in that. It's
Well,
not, it's required.
We are
by
certainly
the
nowhere
zone.
near going down the road
Okay.
of collusion or anything like that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I have to say, I am so offended, the idea that you are sitting here in front of
I'm a reporter,
volunteers
okay?
in the
My
community.
career
provocation.
is to
Right
ask
now,
questions.
you're talking as a member of our community.
Right.
And to come up here and talk to 8 volunteers who volunteering their time for this community and to suggest collusion, I have to say, I am deeply offended.
I agree with that.
I'm sorry.
You're making a statement against us.
Yeah.
I'm
That
asking a
we're in
question.
collusion with the,
You're
Well, I think we've given
we're
you the answer to
independent,
that.
we're independent people here. We'll give up our free time, come
And you're
here
great
and
at what you do.
do the best that we can for the village of
All right,
Nelsonville.
yeah.
Your time
Pauline?
is up?
Sandy Saunders?
Sandy Saunders.
Alexander Saunders, owner of 3 Brook Street. Secret law, and I believe your code, and for good sense, require that all reasonable alternatives be explored.
That's correct.
3 Brook Street, the woods bounded by Peekskill Road and Route 301, a wooded tract of 8 acres is an ideal site with far better sight lines to the village, up 301, south as far as Boscobel. It's a reasonable site, a reasonable alternative, and I
Who owns
highly
it? That's
recommend it. It's also
Oh, you own it.
commercial.
Oh, there you go.
The Phillipstown Code recommends that towers be placed on commercial properties.
I don't think it does, sir.
I believe it does, that's why the vineyard.
Oh, Phillipstown, I'm sorry. Our code.
Phillipstown,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
your
I don't-
code
I'm not
does not.
familiar with it, yes.
But it's much more reasonable to do that. Access to 3 Brook Street is, we have multiple tractor trailers every day in there, it's very easy.
Is that a Phillipstown property you're speaking of, or?
It's private property.
Okay. You-
Yeah,
Why don't you-
I'm talking
do you
about
wanna
3
submit
Brook
a-
Street as an alternate. And
Yeah.
I think it is your
Why don't you
job
send us an email?
as the zoning board
We should.
to review all alternates.
If you put that in writing, then
And
send it over here.
we'll put that in
So we can
writing. I
look at
have
that.
discussed this with Homeland as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I guess your property, I guess, it's,
Richard Shea?
We'd like to see it.
Hi, Richard Shea, Phillipstown Supervisor.
hey, Richard.
You have my empathy. Anyone within earshot of Mr. Gaudioso and his man posse would think this was a slam dunk. But if that were the case, then we would have a power plant on Storm King Mountain.
Okay.
So it's truly not the case. And Mr. Gaudioso makes, his compelling arguments. He's paid to do that, as is every other suit over there. They're paid by Homeland Tower. Homeland Tower is in the business of putting towers up to generate profit and revenue. Don't be confused by that. That's all within their bailiwick. That's not within our bailiwick. Our bailiwick is preserving our community. And one thing we have here is this natural scenic beauty. If we compromise that scenic beauty, everything falls apart after that. The reason people come here, the reason they visit the town, the reason they spend money here is because they want to see what we have. You start putting these towers up, people are going to want to go other places. So it's something to really be cognizant of. I'm sure you are cognizant of that. Also, for Mr. Gaudioso to presume to tell you what your mandate is a little disturbing in hearing that from back here. I know you're fully aware of that, but I take affront to that as a board member. As far as, let me get to my notes here, taking notes on.
Want us to come back?
For a denial of service, no one's feeling like they're denied service in this town. I mean, it's been stated over and over, there's no gap in coverage for the average person driving around or in their home. So, you know, again, that this is that this is emanating from this concern for the town, or concern of lack of service, or concern for emergency services, that's a false argument. So I'd like that also to be taken into account. All in all, I hate to see neighbor pitted against neighbor also, and that's something that people have to really avoid, because the only way to stand up to these things is stand together. So this false, you know, trade-off of saying, well, we're going to have it on Rockledge, we're going to have it on Secor, those aren't, you know, those are two arguments, but the thing is, how about having it nowhere? There is no appreciable gap in coverage. Again, this is all about money, and, you know, don't be fooled by these convincing arguments or taking these things at face value, because their job is to get this tower in. Our job is to protect what we hold dear.
Happy Carnival?
Andy?
I'm sorry, I did not request to speak. Did you take the
Oh.
Yeah, I thought it was
Oh, okay, no problem. No mandate to speak.
Roger Gorovich?
Yes.
Roger?
I live on Round Hill Road above Vineyard. I don't want to get into our thing, we'll just stick with yours. I'd like to ask your lawyer a question, since he brought it up, about that the property owners next to the site on Rockledge
Yeah.
would have the right to file an injunction against Homeland Towers because of easement rights, et cetera, with the road. Now, I'd like to know, is there a homeowners association on thing with regard to maintenance on that road? Is there an easement document? Are there covenants and restrictions? What actually goes on there, that they would have the basis to do that?
We have all that information on file.
You do?
I don't know if there's covenants or restrictions, but there is a right of way to Robert. I thought
But
it
there must be,
thoroughly.
I assume somebody has to pay for maintenance on the road, I assume.
I don't know if there's a homeowners.
They do.
Okay,
So
there you go.
assuming that takes place, do you have an agreement with the other people?
Not a written one. We've all been neighbors for 40 years, so we never really needed that before. That's what living in a small community is all about.
I'm not arguing, I agree with it. It's just occurred to me, listening to the lawyer, your lawyer, that I mean, we have such a mess up where we are, that injunction's coming. I can guarantee Homeland tonight that there will be an injunction filed right away. This situation that's going on in Nelsonville, where we are, has brought out hundreds and hundreds of people. We're not a large community, but one of the things and one of the reasons that we moved up here, my wife and I, is because this is one of the most beautiful places in the world. You can go to Lake Como, you can go anywhere you want in the world. You're not going to find a nicer place.
We would agree.
And the fact of the matter is that as members of this community, and I think Richard said it very well, we can't fight with each other. We have to be united.
Okay.
We have to support each other, and that's what makes this community wonderful. That's why we want to live here. We love the art community. We love the scenic views. We have people that protect us. There are a number of land trust things that institutions and whatnot that are buying up land and everything to protect us all, and to protect the reason that businesses in Cold Spring and in Nelsonville, that the people want to come up here, that they want to live here. We don't want this scarred by things that none of us feel is necessary in the first place. And exactly as Richard said, this is all about money.
Okay.
Make no mistake, and it's David versus Goliath. We are the David, they are the Goliath.
Thank you.
They are Verizon, we are little people. But you know what? You have to stay united, and you can't let them bully you. And don't let them tell you that you can't deny on this base and you can't deny on this base. There are a number of reasons that you can deny, and the courts will uphold you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, well, you know the company as well.
You come to the middle, maybe your voice will travel a bit.
Hi, John Champlin. My parents live at 9 Rockledge Road, which is immediately to the south, I guess, of the proposed site. Probably about, I don't know, 302 feet, I guess, because they said it was more than 300 feet, so can't be much more than that. I just had a question about the balloon test. I know they said that the height was 120, and I apologize if this was asked last week. I couldn't make the meeting last week. How tall are the, one of the things that initially was brought up and has been brought up several times is the ability for the EMS, local EMS, to use this tower if it does get approved and installed.
Right.
How tall are those antennas that go on top of the 110 feet?
4 to 5 feet, but it could be as high as 10 feet, 12 feet. Ron, I don't know if you have a...
No.
Okay, well, it was brought up in another meeting. We didn't have a meeting last week, but it was brought up a couple months ago. The thought was they might be 4 to 5 feet, but relatively.
Again, from what I understand, they're whip antennas.
Yeah.
I think we heard 2 inches in diameter.
Yeah, which is, in pretty much, if you stand up in the cemetery and look up there, it's gonna be really hard to see that antenna on top of that.
Yep, but not from 300 feet away.
No, I'm not saying that 300 feet away, you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
You definitely will see it.
Yeah, so anyway, look, I understand Homeland has the right to make money. I get that. I understand that a private property owner has the right to do with what they want on their property. That's completely within their bailiwick. As far as I just want to respond to the collusion argument that was made. The people that live on Rockledge, we're not saying, oh boy, I hope they put it at Secor, that would be awesome. We're not saying that, okay? We don't really want it anywhere. I'll echo what Richard said, all right? And I think if we start getting divided like that, and those arguments start creeping in, I can tell you where that's gonna go. It's not gonna be good. So I would echo Richard's comments and hope that everyone can keep that in mind when they're starting to talk about things.
All right, thank you.
Ethan Kerr?
Ethan?
Evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. So I'm here to speak for the little ones who are all asleep right now. I'm kind of surprised and saddened that there hasn't been any mention of the school that's very close to this big tower, named the Manitou School, where my precious little girl goes to school. There's a number of countries around the world who've ruled it illegal to build cell phone towers and, in fact, even Wi-Fi signals in schools because they recognize the damaging impact that electromagnetic radiation has on growing cells. This is not new news. It's limited in this country for the reason we see forward in front of us here. But yeah, we could bring forth hundreds of peer-reviewed articles in all kinds of publications that demonstrate the impact, particularly on growing cells in young people, from headaches and earaches and minor things all the way through cancer and leukemia. That is real data that is, white guys made it, okay? This is not like some far-off stretch, okay? So the fact that the town is even considering putting my child's life at risk in this situation is a very, very deep concern of mine. And I imagine if anyone else knows any children, you want them to live in this same beautiful land that we're here for, and not to have more radiation coming into our lives, particularly when we're young and growing. So I can provide hundreds of peer-reviewed articles. I was a science teacher one day, and I actually had some students, middle schoolers, explore whether or not seeds would germinate around Wi-Fi routers versus away from them. And there was a noticeable impact on the Wi-Fi routers, on seeds, plant seeds, y'all, okay? So this is real. We're a little slow. Lots of European countries, France, Switzerland, Italy are way ahead of us on this and have made the legal limit that they referenced hundreds to tens of thousands of times lower because they recognize the impact of this on cells, particularly human cells. Okay, so
thank you for that.
Just calling it in.
Thank you.
Just want to respond to one point, though. We're reviewing this and considering it because we have to. Okay, they've made a fair application that meets our requirements, and now we are reviewing the project based on our requirements and what our zoning code. To tell them, no, you have to go away before we even get into the process would be wrong. And we're here because there's a process that allows them to come forward as property owners or conditional property owners and make an application. So
I respect
we're here to
all
listen.
processes of the law, and I'm calling in science, okay? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, along the lines with the studies, would you be able to just, and again, it seems I may have missed a few documents in our 15 inches of paperwork that we've been going through. Can you submit a few of those peer-reviewed articles just to make sure that we have?
Anyone else? We can do a collective search and have thousands to them in short order. No, you're gonna get more than a couple, I'm sorry, but that's how it works. Thank you all.
Eliza Nagel?
So, why have we chosen to live in Nelsonville, and why have we chosen this small town over all the others that are scattered through New York? Well, I know that my family and I chose this village, and why we decided to build in Nelsonville. We just built on Healy Road. It's the unique nature of this village, the mountains and the stunning river views, and I understand that I may not be substantial evidence, so I just wanted to call out the New York Times, which called us small town America with big time views of the Hudson, and USA Today. The image you'll most readily recall after visiting will be those of the Hudson River and the valley that surrounds it. Or photos. Its true showpiece may well be the breath-stealing river valley views. So it's not just me shouting this out. I may not be substantial evidence, but how about, the top tourist write-ups in this country? I saw that orange balloon. It was sitting right in front of the mountains we see from Healy Road. I'm sorry you missed it, but it was right there. It was mocking those buried in our historic cemetery. And we see the courts littered with the bodies of small towns and the battles they've lost. But we refuse to be one of those villages. I mean, the engineer the tower hired said that this tower will not fill the gap. And I'm sorry, nice try, but you cannot divide us with threats of Secor. And I know that you presented all this evidence of Secor in the beginning, even though we're not discussing Secor. And we see right through you. We are all neighbors here, all of us. We're all neighbors. Telecom greed will not erase our understanding of the reason we all live here.
Okay.
Bravo.
And I'm sorry, but we will not be cowed by your threats, your veiled or unveiled threats of a lawsuit. And I know you don't want to lose to us, because then you may lose to others. But we will not give up this fight. And I say this again to you guys, we have your back. Say no. We won't give up this fight.
Maria Stein-Morrison?
Maria?
Hi,
Thank
I'm
you.
Maria Stein-Marison. I am the director of the Manitou School and owner or co-owner of the Plumbush Inn, which houses the Manitou School, which is listed in the National Registry of Historic Places, and from which we could see that horrible orange balloon. And it affects our view shed, which is something that I will follow up with written record. It was not clear to me when I came to this meeting that our participation in this meeting would somehow not count as part of the record. So I will happily follow up with a letter. I would like.
I'm not sure what you meant by that.
Oh, well,
I think it does count.
there was some question earlier about having a written record.
Yeah, it's all on the record, what you're saying right now.
So this is on the record. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that that was the case. I know that we cannot make a legal argument that the radiation from this tower is sufficient grounds to say no, but I want to echo what Ethan said, which is that we know that it's real. We know it affects young children. Secor is close to Haldane. Rockledge is close to Manitou. neither of these are acceptable options to us living here because of that. Even if we can't make that legal argument, that is at least a moral and ethical consideration for the board, that it will affect the growing brains of young children. From a property owner perspective, it's affecting the nature of my historic property, of my school. People come here, they come to Nelsonville, to Cold Spring, to Phillipstown, and they come to my school looking for natural beauty, looking for that uniqueness that we have. And we, as part of my school community, have spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources in maintaining the unique character of the property. And if you have driven by Manitou, you can see that it looks beautiful now. We bought it, we've maintained it, we want it to continue to be beautiful. And having that tower right behind it, which you will be able to see, is going to cut into the aesthetic value of our property and the experience that all of us have when being in our property. Also, a lot has been said about the cemetery, but it's not just about the gatehouse, which is also listed in the National Historic Registry or National Registry of Historic Places, but the people who are buried there, and it's not just Julia Butterfield. Last year on Election Day, a large group of women from Phillipstown, we dressed in white and we visited the grave of Ida, I'm blanking her last name now, I'm sorry, a suffragist who was instrumental in getting women the right to vote. And I took my girls from the Manitou School, really young girls up to middle schoolers, to that site as an honor and a tribute to these women who have fought for our current rights. And we had an amazing experience in this historical place. That would have been terrible had we had a big cell phone tower looming over us. It would have not been the same. And so just to preserve the character of the historical nature of our cemetery, of our town, of the things that we value, I also urge you to say no to this application.
Okay, thank you. That covers everybody that signed up. Are there people who would like to speak after they've heard, like to be heard? Can we start right to left? Yes, sir.
How you doing? Jeff Rossi. I live at 6 Rockledge Road. I'm going to be affected by this, obviously, but I just want to let everyone know that while we're in opposition of the Rockledge site, we're also in opposition of the Seacourt site. We stand with you. And thank you, guys. First of all, stand here, I'll pose. What I have here is a number of, is all of the deeds, all of the titles from all of the properties on Rockledge. And you can see that various legal counsel, various properties, various years, every single one addresses it as a right-of-way and not an easement. And that distinction is very important, and I really, to the bottom of my heart, appreciate the work that everyone up there has done on this. And I want to help and empower you with everything that you can have to support everything you've heard from the people. And we've heard the language explicitly says right-of-way. There's not one thing that says easement in here. And for that, you've actually retained legal counsel and have every intention to fight this in a court of law. Beyond that, we have documentation in that 15 inches that you've been handed. And if you don't think it's 15 inches to hide some of the data, you're lying to yourself. There's statements in there that have said explicitly that this is not going to improve radio frequency in home. This is not going to improve frequency significantly in car. So not only will I have beautiful line of sight of a cell phone tower, I will not have better cell phone signal. So there's an actual fundamental issue with the site at Rockledge, in addition to all of the emotional damage you'll be doing in the community. So I ask that we will be working with you as much as we can to provide you all the ammunition we can have to end this. And I also give everyone here who's supporting Seacourt, you have my full support to give you the exact same level of support that we have against Rockledge for all you guys. And we're in this meeting.
Steve Sterling. I live on Langate Road. I use Moffett Road quite frequently. I can say that below Healy Road, I've had to back up quite a number of times to let another car come the other way. I've witnessed a car sideswipe the rocks going down on the lower part of it. I can't imagine what kind of highway they'd have to build to allow the fire department to get up there and fight an industrial-sized fire if there were such a thing. I do want to say Mr. Gaudioso is doing a fabulous job for his client. I think he's doing a terrible disservice to our community. We were at a meeting Monday night were 2 pages of misleading statements and misrepresentations in their application for the Phillips Town Towers applications were brought up and verified. We ran across 2 things. One is the question of real estate value dropping. There was a report delivered by Mr. Gaudioso by an independent study, only one of which cited Phillipstown, a home in Phillipstown. There are all other reports that indicate clearly, and think about it logically, do you want to move next to a cell tower? Nobody really does. Your real estate value goes down. If you have real estate value going down, and we as residents grieve our tax rates because our real estate value is going down, then the taxes have to go up in the community to make the difference. But I think the real issue that you all have to contend with, and I thank you immensely as volunteers having to learn about rocket science to try to deal with all this and keep up with it, is that it's the aesthetic question that allows a community to challenge an applicant. And that's the only thing, not radio waves, not damage to children's brains, not any of that. In the federal level, the only reason you now can really challenge an applicant is on the aesthetics. And we have a lot of grounds to do that. And I think we're now in a situation, I think you can tell by the number of people that are here and we're actually on the stairs standing outside, we've gone from a community of not in my backyard. In a year and a half, I've watched 8, 9 meetings of the different boards in Phillipstown, Nelsonville, where we did watch people come in. And I'm on Lane Gate, so I could be between Rockledge and the landfill if that were to happen. And we've gone from not in my backyard to not in my town. And you now see people showing up by the hundreds to these meetings, and you have to take that seriously, and I know you do. And I really appreciate the patience and perseverance that you're all representing in what you're doing, because it's not an easy task, and we're all a little stuck. But what we have found out is that Homeland Towers is making quite a number of misstatements and misrepresentations in the application that Phillipstown has been reviewing. And there are other people coming forward. And there was a gentleman who represented, who was a knowledgeable person, that their model for determining what is a gap is actually a flawed computer model. And of course, it's a favorable computer model.
Okay.
Now, who of us can really look into that?
Right.
I don't know.
Do you have any comments on our, have you reviewed our particular applications on the website? Have you reviewed?
I've done the best I could to keep up with both, to be honest with you.
I mean,
it's very complicated. The last point I want to make, if I may, because at the end of the day, how does Rockledge affect me? It affects me because of Moffett Road and what may or may not go on there. And in the end of the day, it is a community-wide problem, not necessarily Rockledge or Secor or Vineyard Road or wherever it might be. And what I think is happening is, we've talked about a number of times, people raise the question of distributed antenna systems. A bunch of people say, oh, it won't work, it's too challenging, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. It seems like the same thing people could have said about electricity. Oh, you gotta put up poles, you gotta run lines to every house. It's a very small community here. What is Nelsonville? 1 square mile. It's one place where now Ramapo, Silver Spring, Woodbury Commons, a lot of communities are really using distributed antenna systems. Homeland Towers doesn't offer DAS. I would ask you to invite an applicant who does offer DAS, if for no other reason, to get a view of what that could be, in spite of what some different consultants and different constituents would say about DAS being too challenging, it doesn't work everywhere. This is an ideal place for it, in my humble opinion, of trying to learn as much as I can about this. The 2 things I would ask you to do is invite an applicant or somebody in that world that can deal with DAS. And the other thing is, the shot clock can be reset depending on the things that the applicant is representing or misrepresenting. And I'm not an expert on it either, but I would ask you to get that shot clock reset so that we can all have all the time we need to really look at this as thoroughly as we need to feel that we can make the case of an aesthetic challenge here, not all the other things. And I thank you again for your time.
Thanks.
Thank
We'll move across the.
Sure. My name is Jason Viafor. I live on 9D across from the Manitou School. I just want to pick up on what the gentleman said about the shot clock. I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that it's not a strict rule in the sense that as long as the municipality is looking at the application on a good faith basis, or if there are special circumstances which perhaps village council can look into, a court may find that it's not in breach, the village is not in breach of any shot clock violation if a challenge is brought in court by the applicant. Second, I just wanted to sort of say to everyone here, in spite of some of the compelling arguments being made about radio frequency and some other issues, and it was touched upon by the applicant's counsel, it needs to be part of the written record, if I'm not mistaken. So we can all stand up and make our pitch and impassioned pleas, but if you live at a location that could be impacted by this, whether by property values or aesthetically, you have to get an expert, get a report, get it in writing, and get it submitted to the record. And I'm certain that the village will allow the people here tonight to make those submissions, or at least you'll give them time to do so that it is part of the written record and that it's duly considered.
Thank you. You.
Hi, my name's Ethan Tim. I live in Cold Spring. I think, based upon a lot of people's recommendations, I think I want to talk specifically about the aesthetic question. I was surprised to realize that when working on the local waterfront revitalization plan, that really, based from the state's perspective, the waterfront really runs from the river all the way up to Route 9. And I think that similarly to the way that, as Richard Shea pointed out, that when we're talking about aesthetics in this region, the balloon test photographs are, to me, essentially laughable. I mean, you can always kind of stage something like that, and of course, from a close perspective, you don't see the tower. But when you see, as some people have pointed out, when you see iconic photos of this region, we're not talking about up-close views, can I see the tower? We're talking about expansive views. We're talking about hiking up Bull Hill and seeing the village stretch out before you. I think that first of all, and also I want to point out, I think it's unconscionable that a neighbor said she didn't know that there was a test. People said, well, it was in the paper, tough luck. I mean, we had an application just right here down the street on Cedar Street. We had to give notification to the affected neighbors, written notification. They get it on their door. So to say, well, it was in the paper, tough luck, I think that's ridiculous. So I think two things. There needs to be another test. There needs to be another balloon tester. Something that seems ridiculous in this age. We're doing a balloon test. I mean, that's like, what is this, like 1890?
We've also done
But second of all, there needs to be another balloon test. People need to be notified of that. And there needs to be people like up in significant view sheds. Like I'm talking about on Bull Hill. We have thousands of hikers coming up to Bull Hill and to Breakneck. They're going to be staring down at this ridiculous Frankenpine. And they're going to say, why do I even come here? I agree, they're going to go somewhere else, and we'll go somewhere else, I assume. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one brief comment in the closing remarks from the applicant. Can you speak to, along those lines, can you speak to the coastal management zone and if that's considered a special planning district, in your opinion? And we'll also ask the village attorney after the fact. The same, and then also for the applicant, just curious, in your closing remarks, not asking for comments now, can you also let me know if you've submitted, as part of the environmental notification process for the registration of antenna structures, your FCC Form 854 at the end?
Yes, sir.
David Lindbergh, 2 Crown Street. I'd just like to second the request for a higher standard of notification.
Just try to speak up if you can.
Higher standard notification.
Advertising in the local papers is not reaching that many people.
We advertise in two papers.
It's not hard to put a flyer on everyone's front door. It's a small
Who
community.
would do that? Who would do that?
Our neighborhood did that with
Yeah.
the McCarthy's. They put all the details of what was happening at Secor Street was in everybody's mailbox.
You're not allowed to do that, it's against the law.
All right.
Well, I understand it.
Well, you're not
No, I'm
In
just
fact,
saying.
you know what? They didn't put it in the mailbox. It was handed to me.
Oh, there we go. All right, so anyway, that's a good point. More notification. We did think that the 2 papers were sufficient, that's required by law, and by social media, we thought that word would get out by even better. Yeah. Let's hold 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
You're done, sir?
Yes.
My name is Frances O'Neill, and I've been heading to Save the Cold Spring Cemetery. It's been on Facebook, the Cold Spring Cemetery Facebook site, the Phillipstown local Facebook site, and what's the other one, the Find Another Cell Phone option face site. So it's been on all 3. If everybody had been at the meetings, I'm so glad to see a big turnout now. We had a very small turnout in the past. It was mentioned there. It's been in the newspapers. So I just want to make it known that it has been on Facebook all over the place for several days. So short of that, I don't know what else we can do.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Before you close the speaking portion from the public, oh, sorry, my name is Stephanie Hawkins. I live in the village of Cold Spring. I wanted to thank you very much for the deliberation that you have to do for this and other applications. And people are angry, and you know, and it puts you. We're all neighbors, and it's everybody in a, fine. But before you said no more comments from people, I just wanted to remind you that we are all substantial evidence, and I think Eliza Nagel pointed that, compared herself to the question of whether or not she was. I think she is. Thank you for your remarks. I think all of us are, and I would challenge you, sir, to the attorney representing the applicant, to hey, if you think an individual testimony is insubstantial, then I would say it starts with you. But I want to remind you, because I know that he's going to get up and he's loquacious, as I am, and he will say a lot. He will ask him a question, and I thought he was pretty. It was an interesting response to your question, Chairman Marino, about what does it mean to look this the gap, and I found it to be wanting. Yes. Not that I want him to go on any further, because I know, based on what was explained, that it's really, when I say gap, quote unquote, it's not a signal issue, because that's not what's going on here. I would echo the remarks of Supervisor Shea and the gentleman, I think it was about it being a financial matter. And I wanted to address when the teacher from the woman who runs the she conjured herself out of the carpet, and said that this is she has a business. Never you mind about your service. Never you mind about your service. We have service here. We have children being educated. This is, if there has to be equal weight given, and I would just I would encourage you to be very skeptical and cast a very jaundiced eye on the application, because it has been clear to you that the burden of proving the applicant not sort of entitled to yes, it falls on you, which I think is a really rubbish sort of.
No, I think the burden applies on the applicant. It's quite clear.
Okay. Well, okay. I am not persuaded, and I'm here to say that it would damage my experience of the view shed. The sweeping views that Ethan referred to. That's why. I love it here. I'm not an old timer or a long timer, sure, but I love it. And there are people who have grown up here who have stayed here because it's beautiful. And so I think a lot of us share that sentiment.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We have 3 more questions. 3 more?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Llewellyn. I live in Nelsonville, at 308 Main Street. And I spoke at the last meeting. I already said most of my thoughts here, but as I've been explaining this to my children and remembering when I was growing up, I grew up in a nice community, and I remember my parents hosting neighborhood meetings at their house, going to meetings like this. I remember my parents explaining to me that zoning was so that we would have residential areas in residential areas, and we would have factories, which we need, in areas that were more commercial. And that's what zoning was. It's to make all the places work together in concert in a way that works best for those in the community. And I really thank you all, because we all see how much work this is. I know as someone who's just recently gotten involved, I'm bogged down by how much work it is, and I'm not doing much compared to you guys. But I think this is what zoning's for. And you can look at the letter of the law, and you have to, and I thank you that you do. But I think deep in our hearts, we all know that the reason people volunteer for zoning boards and other sorts of community service, public service, is because they love where we live. And I do resent having to prove that a giant cell tower would ruin the view or detract from my property value. That's obvious. Why should I have to prove it? Why should I have to pay someone to come assess what the tax value of my house will be later and like take my time to do that? I don't, that's, you know, that's a burden. It's falling on everyone in this room, so we can get these bullies, you know, they're gonna come here and tell you, you lose, you lose, you lose. I am begging you to take up their dare. We've got your back.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, they win and we get the towers, but at least we'll come together. We'll all thank you, you know. The worst case scenario, you know, is that, and at least we'll know we tried, because we're gonna lose all those listings.
You're welcome to speak again, but we're kind of wrapping things up. We have people that haven't spoken. We'll speak first.
Dave McCarthy,
Dave.
256 Main Street, Nelsonville. Eight volunteers here, hundreds of neighbors. A lot of us worried about our property value, worried about each other, worried about our kids, worried about our community. It's 8 guys in suits. They're rich. They're gonna be rich whether that tower goes in or not. I would be remiss not to ask the property owner, please, we're your neighbors. We care about you. We don't want this tower. Work with us, talk with us. We're a community, we shouldn't fold to them. Whatever you need, let's talk about it and we'll try to make it happen. We really don't want this here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura. I live in the village of Cold Spring on Parrot Street, very close to both locations. And my child has attended Manitou School in her preschool years and currently attends Haldane in elementary school. I just want to reiterate, you know, some of the more recent comments that have come up, describing that the presentation that's made by the lawyers for Homeland needs to be called into question. Some of the evidence that they present to you, and I understand it's a really tough job and there's inches and inches of paperwork. I can't even imagine going through them. Just on the point of these visual renderings that they keep referring to as sort of doctrine. Visual renderings, computer models, are abstractions. They're not real. They're marketing tools. And I think we really, as a planning board, need to be, or as a community, we should all be aware of that. The balloon test definitely has its issues. It's not hard science. So visual renderings, whether it's a fancy computer model or a balloon test, it's not science and shouldn't be taken as science. And I think that just reiterates, or sort of speaks to a lot of the other evidence that people are talking about that needs to be called into question. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got one in the back. Oh, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bevan Harris. I live on 61 Moffett Road, so I'm stone's throw, sort of the southwest corner of that property for the proposed cell tower. I don't need to tell you why I'm against it as well, and some of you heard me state it before, but like dirt roads, I grew up in Brooklyn. I know the city. I try to get away from the tall steel towers, and I've been here for 20 years. I like dirt roads. I like tall buildings. I don't necessarily want to live next to the tall buildings, which is why I live here. And I definitely don't need a reminder when I look out my back door to see the tower looming over me. The other part is, we need to stay together as a community. There's divisiveness throughout the world right now and within our country. There are court cases. I pulled up one, Selco Partnership versus Russell, where the court was persuaded by the unique circumstances surrounding the moratorium, particularly the fact that scenic, mountainous, and rural county derive substantial income from tourism. So there are cases out there that support our situation. And in regards to the need for more cell service, I look across the river, and not that I wanted to face Storm King, but I think, okay, what about a tower there that I don't know the range necessarily, but could that support any, if we had needs for loss of cell service, that be a consideration. It still provides services for us, but it's not defacing the community in the way that we're addressing now. So and I will happily pull together court cases to support it so that we understand, like, this is not the first time. And I mean, Connecticut has got a moratorium going on with cell towers. They're rife with it. So just stay together.
We agree. We encourage everyone to really read the case law. Those are the facts. Case law is on the internet. You can read it, and those are the facts. What Robert's talking about, both are Roberts, the village attorney, the applicant's attorney. Case law is case law. You can read it. It's in black and white. You can make a tally sheet of who wins and who loses. There's no question about it. Read it, and you'll be as smart as any attorney.
Someone in their infinite wisdom in the past put cell towers as an allowable use in certain zones in the village of Nelsonville with a special permit. So that's why we're dealing with this. It's in the zoning now, so we have to go through the process.
Yeah, there's no mystery to this. Read it on the internet, and that sounds like everybody is. That's why you're here. But if you want to find out what the law says, please read about it.
Understood.
This is what I'm suggesting, working off what you said, and you're doing it, and you found the case in your favor. That's what you need to do. If you want to get together and they want to talk about the substantial evidence that they need, or the board needs.
I don't know what the end-all decision is that you, the board, needs. I think we need to recognize that we as a community need to determine that it's not,
I think that too, yes.
I mean, as a member of the community, I think that's the most important part.
We agree, yes. Yes, it's all out there. We have one last question, or no, we don't. We have a follow-up question. You want to amend your comment?
Very quick.
Just a comment about collusion? We appreciate that.
You're going to do that, I don't want you to speak. You're going to accuse me of being in collusion. I'm very insulted about what you said. I'm very insulted.
Nothing I said was about you.
Well, thanks for clarifying the record.
No, you misunderstood.
Oh, okay. Could you clarify it then for the record?
Yes, for the record.
Yes.
For the record, okay? And I'm only speaking loudly so people can hear.
Yes, certainly.
First of all, I love everyone in the room. The fact that you're here means this is important. I was saying that this, now that the 2C4 site is part of your decision-making process, which it is, it seems that it's sensible for you to have access to the correspondence between the company and the village, to be sure there's integrity there, to avoid the appearance, or even, to avoid any questions about.
I would assume our village attorney is representing the village in that negotiation.
I know, but so that I was not talking about you at all, and I'm not even talking about the village trustees. I'm saying it's in everyone's interest here, particularly the company, to avoid even an appearance of anything like that.
Conflict of interest, exactly. We've been extremely transparent.
Yeah.
As you can see, everything's on the website.
And I'm a journalist. I work at ProPublica. My job is investigative reporting. I don't believe anybody on the
we understand.
So I have that kind of instinct. But this is a community I care about, and that was a hypothetical.
Okay.
But transparency is important.
It is, and that's what we've been, I guarantee.
That's all I meant to say.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. Anybody else before I'd like to give the applicant Do we want to summarize? Well,
if they wanna
summarize it,
respond,
we're
they
gonna talk
can
about
take
what the
it.
next steps
I
are.
want to just keep it real brief. There were a
Yes.
few things I just have to correct, a couple questions that were asked.
Yes.
Okay.
In writing as long
No,
as
I
it's-
think it's important to just address
Well,
it.
we'd like to hear the,
There was a statement that was attributed to me by Mr. Axelrod that if I gave the impression that the property had to be contemplated for a cell tower at the time of the right-of-way, that is not what I said, and I want to make that clear, just that it was contemplated as a buildable lot. So just to clarify that. Going back to the discussion about significant gap.
Yes. You can't quite hear you, Robert.
Sure. Going back to significant gap, all of that case law, I was not threatening with that. I was asked specific questions about that. I was giving you the case law, what it says. One thing I did overlook, all of that case law is based on section 332C, which I mentioned before, and that goes specifically to your point. There's also section 253 of the Telecommunications Act, which again restricts municipalities from prohibiting any telecommunications. So whether it's under 332C and the question of whether it's data or whether it's telephone, all telecommunications may not be prohibited under section 253. I think that's important. Regarding the lease is a matter of public record. If someone wants to ask the village board and they want to pursuant to a FOIL request, we have no objection to that. We did not submit it under any type of limitation from FOIL. And just to put in perspective, at one of the very first meetings, this board complied with its duties and asked us to look at alternative sites. We spoke to the village board, who said they may have some alternatives. They offered 3. Okay, one was a piece of OSI property that they responded back that, when I say OSI, I guess it's Hudson Highlands. I was a little unclear about this. It's a small piece of property, and apparently the lawyer said that it couldn't be used for this type of use. The second one, so we never pursued it any further. The second one was 50 Fishkill Road, and we've submitted from a technical standpoint and showed you that that does not work from a technical standpoint. The third was 2 Seeker Street. Again, the village brought us to that as a potential alternative. We would not have been acting in good faith if we didn't look at it as a potential alternative, which we did. We screened it from a technical standpoint, showed you that from a technical standpoint it worked. We told you in my letter specifically that we made a good faith lease offer to the village. The village trustees are undergoing reasonable and proper due diligence. They held a public hearing on the issue, and they're contemplating whether in their discretion as the property owners, whether they should lease it or not. And I think that is the exact right process, both on our side, on your side, and telling us to look for alternatives, and particularly the village board side in investigating it. No decisions have been made. If a decision is made, we will present those facts and that evidence to you as well. So that's been completely transparent across the board, and I want to make that perfectly clear. We also looked at the Saunders property. We actually investigated it. We called Mr. Saunders. We appreciate his interest. Mr. Vicente.
Saunders right here.
Yes, Mr. Vicente looked at it. Mr. Xavier looked at it personally. From a zoning standpoint, it's not in a permitted zone. So if for some reason this board felt that a use variance is better than a special permit and wanted us to investigate it further, we would, but under the code, it's not in a permitted zone. It's in a commercial zone, which in your code is not permitted. So that's why we haven't pursued that any further at this point.
Is it up to the board to make to ask you to do that, or
Well, we're
requires a
telling
use
you
variance?
we're telling you that it requires a use variance, and therefore we don't think it's a
It's an
feasible
extremely
alternative.
difficult thing to achieve.
If for some reason in the board's deliberations you said you wanted more information on it, we would
Okay.
provide that. The setback to schools is really an important point. There is no setback to schools. There is no setback to schools in your village code. There's no setbacks to schools in state law or in federal law. The only cases that I've seen that have gone to court where a municipality had a setback to a school, it was struck down. Okay? Nevertheless, we understand the issue is very important, but it's a matter of perception. But the science is just the opposite. We went to the Haldane School the other day for the village board meeting, and there was a Wi-Fi access point right in the auditorium that we were sitting in. To think that somehow schools do not have wireless service and similar type of uses is naive. That's not the case in the 21st century. That's what the children learn on. Notepads, computers that are laptops, these are in schools already. So you have to separate the reality from, I think, the perception. There was a statement by Mr. Rossi, which I want to correct for the record. He said, our documents say that, that the site will not significantly improve in-home or in-car service. That's simply not true. The documents do not say that. In fact, your own consultant supports that in his reports. Mr. Sterling, who does not live in Nelsonville, made a statement which I think was reckless and incorrect. He said that there were 2 pages of misstatements by, I think, myself and my applicant in another application, and alluded to the fact that we had misleading statements in this application. Again, without any type of specifics, I can tell you that's just simply not correct. If he has specifics of what might be misleading in this application, we'd be happy to hear it. If there is a mistake somewhere, we would be happy to correct it. But we don't believe that's the case. Regarding the coastal zone planning, I don't know the answer. It was my understanding that Nelsonville does not have an LWRP. I would have to double, is that correct?
I believe it does not.
Okay, so that would be my answer. It does not have an LWRP. I don't believe then an LWRP would apply to this particular site. That's my understanding. If someone has a different opinion, I'd be happy to research it further.
I was asking for your opinion, thank you.
Sure. The Form 854, that happens at the time of construction, so that wouldn't have happened at this stage.
And that requires a 30-day comment period?
Not believe it does.
I don't believe so. Finally, I appear in front of a lot of boards. I want to thank you for your professionalism, particularly the chairs, but all the board members, the courtesy you extended to us. We appreciate that. Thank you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next step.
Well, I would suggest, William, that since there's still information that has been requested, information that has just come in tonight, that we haven't really had a chance, this afternoon and tonight, that we haven't really had a chance to review yet, that we adjourn the public hearing for the time being to a date certain. We'll have to figure out what date that will be. In order to,
within 2 weeks, so I think we need to say it, right?
if we can do it in 2 weeks,
Give
2
me
weeks
a-
from tonight, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, we'd like to leave, we'd like to leave here, and I know we can, we'd like to leave here with the date somewhat locked in. What would that be? What's actually the date? December, no,
I can't be there.
29th.
Oh, no, I can't either, I have a meeting.
Okay, how about the, okay, so, I mean, yeah, the objective would be to have the meeting, when you say adjourn the meeting, you mean continue it?
Continue the public hearing.
Continue the public
Leave the
hearing.
leave the public hearing open and continue, and adjourn this public hearing until another date too.
Can I ask one more thing before we do that?
Yes.
I'm sorry. At the last, this is our hearing, at the last public meeting, we asked the applicant to not submit documents the day before or the day of. We've been experiencing document dumps every single meeting we've had. We've been getting significant amounts of paperwork the day of or the day prior. That's very challenging. At the last meeting, we discussed submitting things a week in advance, and yet we still got more documents yesterday and today. Can you please submit them a week ahead of time at least? So I know that it's gonna be particularly tight for this next one. But
We appreciate your concern.
Do that.
The things
because
we're,
it's
yeah,
particularly
I know,
very challenging.
we totally appreciate that, and just, we had received a request from Mr. Gaynor a couple days ago, submitted it that day. The balloon test came in
There's
at the
other
last
arguments
minute.
in terms of the private land disturb, and there was
Yeah,
documents
so
from 2 months ago
we
that
do
we
a-
just got a document yesterday.
Yeah,
I mean, there's.
No, we do
there's
apologize,
still-
it's been a tight
so
time
please do it
frame,
in
we're trying
advance.
to be diligent.
Thank you.
The quicker we'll get the stuff in, we
You know,
appreciate it.
I
We
look at my
understand.
computer in the morning, I got this many emails.
I feel the same way.
In the afternoon, I got this many more emails.
We agree.
My time is valuable, just like you guys are.
We agree.
And we, you know, to sit down and read this and digest it all, it takes time.
No, we understand.
You know,
Bob,
these are
Mr.
documents
Sardi.
you got tonight, I haven't even looked at
Do
them
we
yet.
need to make a motion now to continue to leave the public hearing open, adjourn to a, and do both boards have to make their own separate motions?
If it's possible to pick a date tonight, when everybody's here and then the public is here too.
I would prefer that.
It would be better for me.
So we're looking at, we want Peggy to be here. Is there a date that?
How much notice do we have to give?
Well, we'd like to give a week's notice. I think that.
We'd like to do it tonight while the public is here, if it's possible.
Yeah, so hang on for 1 minute. We'd like to maybe lock in a date that we can meet again and wrap this up one way or another.
The 29th, Wednesday, the 29th.
So
Peggy.
the Wednesday night, I have a commitment that I can't break.
Right. But the Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday the 30th?
30th, I can't be here.
Okay,
I can have
how
one of
about
my
Tuesday the
partners be here.
28th? Oh, we could have your,
I can have a partner be here.
I cannot make the 30th.
can't make the 30th? All right, let's go back to the,
28th?
28th.
28th.
I'm good for the 28th.
28th is a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Good day for me.
That works.
Oh, well, let's, how about you guys? I don't know if we need everybody, but,
Yeah, we'll work the board's discretion. Whatever you say is good with us.
right now we'd like to lock in then the Tuesday the 28th at 8 o'clock. Will be the continuation of the public hearing.
I guess location to be determined, though. We don't know if this room is available on
Right,
that.
I'll have to find out where we will be
Any chance
meeting.
of getting it earlier, the 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock?
Want to do try 7:30? Does anybody object to 7:30? I know there's people coming from the city.
But we don't know where we're gonna meet yet.
Yeah,
We're
no,
still
no, I
trying to sort
heard you
that out.
addressing the location, maybe, and I wanted to make a plea for Haldane.
Can we plan to have it here, and if it's not here, it'll be advertised?
Yeah, so we'll plan to have it here. If we need a bigger crowd, we'll
talk about Haldane.
move the venue. So make a motion to adjourn to the.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
just to clarify,
Yeah.
so everyone hears it. The 28th at 7:30 here. If it's not here, maybe we'll post a sign out front of where it is. If it's
Yeah.
not here.
Yeah, I'll be putting it on the website, I'll be putting it on the Facebook page, I'll be putting it in
Once
the
we get some
paper.
feedback, if we're gonna be getting people out into the hall again, Haldane is probably
I
the
just
place
want
to
to make
do
sure
it
that
if we
everyone
can.
understands the date, that's all.
All right, 7:30, November 28th.
So moved. All in favor?
Motion closed. Thanks for coming and thanks for everything.